Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar stirs up a political storm as he pitches for 50% job quota for backward classes in the private sector. The JDU leader says no contract should be signed with any private firm unless the company ensures the jobs quota. He also calls for a national debate on the issue.
It's a big jolt for the government and the opposition parties ahead of the demonetization anniversary. From Jayant Sinha to former UPA ministers Vaila Ravi and Sachin Pilot, the Paragraph papers named 714 Indians for stashing money overseas. Sinha denies allegations, says translations and transactions are all bona fide. A multi-agency panel will probe names in the data leak.
Even as the government and the opposition parties stock up on ammunition ahead of the first note ban anniversary, top Indian bankers laud Modi government's first big step to weed out black money. ET now also brings you a series tracing the impact of note ban on lives of ordinary people a year later.
The list of GST's cheeky expansions gets longer as Mamata Banerjee calls it the great selfish tax. The West Bengal Chief Minister says Modi government has done a big disservice to the Indian economy with note ban and the GST.
Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's latest visit to army posts in Arunachal Pradesh draws Beijing's ire. China says such visits are not conducive to peace talks between the two countries. China's objection comes just a day after Sitharaman made her maiden visit to the northeastern state.
Arrest of cartoonist Bala by the Tamil Nadu government sparks public outrage in an exclusive chat with the Times Network. Bala says he will not bow down to the cowardly tactics. Good evening. You are joining us on the India development debate this evening. I'm Supriya, Shrinate, and with me in Mumbai is my colleague Sandeep Gurumurthi. The big debate this evening then. Should there be any reservation for the backward classes in private sector jobs? The demand for quota has been making rounds from time to time, with politicians and pressure groups using this as an effective tool for vote bank politics. The debate has been reignited, though, by Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, who is under fire for pitching for a 50% job reservation in the private sector. Nitish's critics say it is a direct intervention in the working of the for-profit companies, and this could result in operational deficiencies. But the question that also arises is about the lack of jobs in the public sector to begin with. And the other big question is bridging social equity the sole responsibility of the state? But what sort of a role should industry play in there?
This at a time when jobs are hard to come by and corporate bottom lines are under stress. Nitish's move raises a stink. We at ET now have a lot of questions for Nitish, who's been projecting himself as a champion of reforms. Is it correct to blame India Inc. for the government's failure to create jobs? Won't this move affect private firms which are facing a big crisis in terms of demand slowdown? More importantly, isn't this gross injustice to meritorious candidates who are without a job, who may be without a job because of the Quota Raj? Meritocracy versus the Quota Raj. That's the top topic on discussion at the India development debate this Monday evening. And joining us on the show is a very special panel. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, CMD of Biocon, Kanchai Lai, activist for Dalit rights. We've got Surinder S. Jodhkar, professor at JNU, Sanjay Jha of the Congress, Arvind Gupta of the BJP, who of course though joins in today in his individual capacity. Ms. Shaw, thanks for joining us. I'm going to start off with you. My compliments to you. It's a pity that many in India Inc. are not speaking up today. Very few people are willing to talk on a matter as important, as critical as this. You are. Thanks for joining us. You believe that this is in many ways what you'd call vote bank politics at its worst. Why do you believe, Ms. Shaw, this is vote bank politics that Nitish Kumar is trying to practice right now?
You know, first and foremost, I am very surprised that an erudite and a reformist political leader like Nitish Kumar is actually, you know, trying to sort of tread on a very, very delicate area in terms of job creation, and that too it's about SC/STs. You know, the question I want to ask Mr. Nitish Kumar is he referring to unskilled jobs or is he referring to skilled jobs? Because if it's unskilled jobs, I welcome this move. But if it is skilled jobs, I think you cannot foster this on, you know, India Inc., on private sector, because this is a very, very dangerous kind of ploy, because as you yourself said just now, I think private sector has to be globally competitive. Private sector has to definitely employ skilled, personnel. And if SC/STs are properly skilled, I don't think there's any problem. But this is almost like a failure admitted by the government that they haven't been able to skill the SC/STs and make them job worthy. So why are you trying to target a soft target like private sector for your failure? I mean, this has already been attempted in two very badly failed economies. If you look at Venezuela and Zimbabwe, this is exactly what those two governments have done. They have destroyed these two economies because they actually did what Nitish Kumar wants to do. They nationalized their private sectors, they mandated local employment, and today both these are failed economies. Don't we want to learn lessons from these failed economies? Do we want to repeat these mistakes? Do we not want to enable our private sector and make them globally competitive? So I just fail to see why he's going down this path.
Okay, you fail to understand why a so-called reformist and erudite leader, Nitish Kumar, is talking about private sector jobs. You call India Inc. a soft target. I'm sure the politicians have a different view on this. Let me begin with Arvind Gupta. And Arvind, I appreciate the fact that you're not really voicing the BJP's political stance on this today, but you're a politician and I will ask you this question. Nitish Kumar isn't any other politician in this country. He is the Chief Minister of Bihar. He's an NDA ally. Ramvilas Paswan within the NDA fold also speaks the same language. Is it tough for a politician to speak against what Nitish has spoken today? I don't know what your view is, but I'm going to first ask you, is it tough for a politician to air another view? Let me then get your view also.
So, Supriya, a couple of things here. Let me first try to make sense of what Mr. Nitish Kumar has said. And I think a lot of media has reported his statement in a manner which looks like he's asking for reservations in the private sector, but he's not. If you look at his statement, what he has said is jobs that were meant for government employees are being done by private firms and on a contract basis should hire the same ratio of people where there are reservations. So that should not become a via means for people to sidestep the reservations that they are supposed to have in their department. So number one, he's made a very valid contractual issue where he said that departments should not find a via means to hire private firms and outsource in a way their jobs on a staffing basis to other companies, and these companies don't follow the reservations that were erstwhile applicable in the government department. So that's the point he has made. But on the larger issue, I think what everybody, at least I as somebody who works in the private sector, works with startups, I think we have to move towards a regime, and I'm going to totally disagree if people say all over the country that in all private sector there has to be reservations, because I think the essence of the Modi government has been on empowerment and not entitlement. And here we want to build the right skills so that companies go out and hire right talent. I think what we have to ensure is that the right skills, the right talent gets hired. And of course, the procedures and the policies and the regulation around it should be on preventing any exclusion. So if people are getting excluded, despite being skilled or being meritorious because of certain affiliations, that should not happen. So if you prevent exclusion and ensure affirmative action, I think that is the need of the hour. There is no need for quotas and reservation in the private sector. So there are two things. One is the statement that Mr. Nitish Kumar made, and one is the larger debate on reservations in the private sector. And I think India is growing. The new India does not have space for that.
But just to clear the air, apart from making that statement, Mr. Nitish Kumar did go on to say that there is a case for a national debate on quota in the private, which is why we're doing this debate. We know his views on the fact that contractual employees of government contracts, there should be reservation and should not be passed on. But he did call for a national debate on reservation in the private sector, and this is the stated position of Ramvilas Paswan of the Lok Janshakti Party, which is of course an ally. Sanjay Jha, what is the Congress Party's view on this? I know back in 2004, we had Prime Minister Manmohan Singh then call for affirmative action. This was an issue that was talked about. What is the Congress Party's view? Because I think it's important that tonight this is a debate where you need to take a position one way or the other. And of course, everyone's going to back increased private sector participation. Like Ms. Shaw herself pointed out, there's a case for giving them unskilled jobs. But it's important to know what is each party's view? What is the Congress Party's view on this issue?
Well, first and foremost, Sandeep, I can tell you that Mr. Nitish Kumar has tried to score a political googly for a rather battered and bruised looking BJP in Gujarat, where reservations by the Patidar community is now snowballing into a major political challenge for the BJP. Now, let's look at some facts in detail. Now, positive discrimination or reservations for the underprivileged class, particularly the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe, and the OBC is enshrined in the Indian Constitution. You'll remember that Dr. Ambedkar had serious differences then with the Jansangh on the same issue, the same Jansangh which is now called the BJP. The second point, I mean, these are realities we need to confront, and I will answer your question. I will take the bull by the horns. Number two, if you add the SC, ST, and the OBC in India, they comprise roughly 3/4 of India, around 74 to 75% of India. The representation of this entire three communities in the private sector is just 3%. Number one, you also know that 1% of Indians own 60% of its wealth. So there is a greatly polarized society that we live in, where income inequality and at the same time, therefore, equal opportunities are really terms that we use because they sound good, they sound sexy to use in symposiums. But bottom line, are they changing the lives of the common man? The answer is no. Now, the point that the Congress Party has always maintained that you can't, however, impose a mandatory, shall we say, fiat, because that to some extent will face a massive resistance. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Kiran, and I think she's made some very, very strong and pertinent points on behalf of the corporate sector. I also feel she's remarkably brave to have come, because many people don't come on a TV channel to oppose Mr. Modi's diktats. Now, the third point, Sandeep, is crucial, because end of day, if we don't create a platform where people feel that they have an opportunity, you'll create a society that will be hugely imbalanced. And in the long run, these things lead to very unpleasant and very often violent consequences. Unemployment is possibly the biggest problem today. Now, it's ironical that, Nitish Kumar should talk about reservation in jobs when the fundamental problem that somebody like Arvind, who again is a more reasonable, moderate guy from the BJP, will probably answer, but where are the jobs? There are no jobs. And I think that's the reality. Everybody wants a meritocratic society.
Sanjay.
Everybody wants affirmative action.
Right.
Everybody wants an India where everybody gets a chance.
Okay.
Right. Sanjay, I think you've put the nail on its head when you say everybody wants meritocracy. But I'm going to just take this debate and talk numbers right now. Professor Jodka, if I may come to you, do you believe this debate or similar arguments are being made given the economic realities? I mean, if you actually look at the numbers between 2006 to 2012, public sector jobs have declined by 3.3%. And PSU jobs have grown by 35.5%. Sorry, private jobs. And is that where the debate really lies? That the avenues of reservation have dwindled, and people marginalized who get reservations are perhaps, this is a political point. Because PSU jobs are declining and private sector jobs are going up, we are seeing a debate like this in the public sphere. Professor Jodka.
Yes, certainly. These are real issues, but I think what Nitish Kumar is talking about is a very easy and simple way of dealing with the question. First of all, you have to deal with the realities. I mean, Bihar particularly has had no industrialization. There's hardly any private sector. Who is outsourcing the jobs that are to be done by the state? It's the state who has decided to outsource jobs. And when they are employed in the state, their working conditions are much better. Contractual jobs, whether it is at the lower level or middle level, they are very, very bad. And in those levels, for example, sweeping of streets in the cities of Bihar, they are already done by Dalits. I mean, no upper caste people do that. So I think this is an easy kind of way of dealing with question. Affirmative action is not simply reservations. Reservations you can't impose on private sector even legally. These are very, very serious questions, and politicians find easy answers to these questions by kind of throwing a ball in the ground, and then everybody is running after that. So I think reservation doesn't make sense at all. As you rightly said, there are no jobs in the government sector. Even private sector, there are very few jobs. The problem is that the upper end jobs are not being given to people coming from Dalit background or scheduled tribe background. There was a time when those candidates were not there. Now there are candidates available, and we need to sit on the together with private sector and see how you can make economy more inclusive, more participatory, so that larger sections of Indian society participate in this India story. And we are going in the opposite direction, which is unsustainable. It is unsustainable for everyone. For politicians, obviously, these are real challenges because people are unemployed and they are screaming and they're shouting at them and they need to respond. But they respond in this kind of rhetoric manner rather than sitting together and discussing the real problems of exclusion and inclusion.
Okay, fair enough.
Education is one sector where state can invest.
Okay,
Infrastructure is another sector where state needs to majorly invest.
Okay.
And public services have to be provided by the state, not by the private sector.
Okay,
So state needs to
Professor
mobilize itself and hire people on jobs which are already there with the state.
Okay,
Large
Professor,
proportion of jobs inside the state are lying vacant.
Okay, Professor Jyotka, I'm just going to interrupt you and get
Professor
Jyotka, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment.
They outsource things and then they ask private sector to reserve positions in private sector will do whatever they find most profitable.
Okay, fair
You
enough.
can't really
Professor
blame
Jyotka,
them.
I am going to interrupt you for a second to get in a word from Kanchai Laya as well. He needs to get in a word in this debate. Kanchai Laya, very quick point on this whole. This debate has come up partly because of disparity in job creation in the public sector and the private sector. Isn't that a failure of the public sector, failure of the government in some ways to create enough jobs, like Sanjay Jha pointed out? Why should the private sector compensate for the inefficiency and the incompetence of the public sector?
Well, in the recent, my struggle against the two Telugu state capitalists called Arya Vaishyas, I have consistently shown a recent study which is available. After that, there is no study available. What is the caste composition of the control of the private sector? From Ambani down to the Andhra state capitalist ownership, the directorate control of Banyas is 46%. And the directorate control of Brahmins is 44.6%. And the entire Shudras, including Kammas, Kapus, Jats, Patels, whatever, is 3.8. Scheduled caste is 3.5. Kshatriya 0.5, others 1.5. Now look at this caste control of Banya and Brahmin. It is 90.6. Now the question is, today after Narendra Modi's demonetization, that lady speaker said soft private sector. What a horrible statement. The demonetization was the biggest social smuggling that the Indian industrialists have planned along with Narendra Modi and Amit Shah. Now within 10 months, their profit ratio has gone up 27%, where the GDP from which the government draws certain benefit economy has gone down from 7.6 to 5.6. Now, during these 3 years, entire government jobs have been shifted to private sector under the leadership of Ambani, Adani, and then all these companies which are headed by Banya and Ram.
Okay.
So
Mr. Kanchai Laya, let me come in on that. Mr. Kanchai Laya, let me come in on that. No, please wait. I think you've made a valid point. Please wait, Mr. Kanchai Laya. You've made a valid point about caste representation in Indian industry, and I'm not going to deny you that. Let me get Kiran Shah to talk about this. I think you made a valid point. We are not here to slander Indian industry. We at TT Now don't believe profit is a bad word. We believe profit is a good word. We also believe that social equity is important. It should not be the task of the government alone to bridge it. Everybody has to play a part, including in industry. But we don't think profit is a bad word. So I'm going to state the channel's position on that first. But Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, one of the things that Kanchalaya talks about is the caste representation. Banyas and Brahmins make up 90.6% and everybody else, of course, then makes the rest of the 10%. The marginalized are underrepresented in Indian industry. Is there an inherent, subtle indifference, bias against them without perhaps the industry even knowing about it?
You know, let me answer this by saying that, you know, if you get skilled people, I don't think industry or India Inc. really cares about which, you know, section of society they represent. I don't think companies like ours or any IT companies really even has any classification of whether you're SC, ST or a Brahmin or a Banya or whatever it is. I think we are looking for a set of skills. If you have it, you get the job. And I think that's what I'm talking about. I think one of the panelists made a very important statement. Why isn't government really investing in education in a big way? Why aren't we investing in skilling SC, STs in a big way? I mean, we talk about Skill India. Why can't we actually, you know, focus and funnel our investments in skilling the SC, STs much more than other sections of society? That's where government can actually exercise affirmative action, skill them and get them to be job worthy. They will get such jobs. But if you just basically keep, you know, this rhetoric and you keep sort of targeting private sector in a meaningless way, it's not going to get you anywhere. So I personally believe invest in the SC, ST, educate them, skill them, and they will get those jobs. But reservation is not going to get them jobs in the future.
Reservation is not the answer. Invest in them, skill them. India Inc. has no bias, says Kiran Majumdar-Shaw. Arvind Gupta, I saw you raise your hand. Come in on that. Arvind Gupta, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I want to respond to a few things that both Mr. Jha raised and other panelists raised. But let me begin by what Ms. Shaw just said. I think the larger point I was also trying to make is the same, that the government already has a slew of schemes for skilling, and there is a special target and numbers and budget allocation for skilling underprivileged, Dalit, whatever people are in the special categories. So there is a clear move of the government to make sure at the funnel, at the start of the funnel is where you skill people correctly, give them the right education, and in our education system we have a lot of reservations. So I think the effect, the down effect of the funnel should be controlled at the education at the start of the system, which is the education system, and if the people perform equally and on merit, they will get jobs. I give an example of the IT industry employs about 4.2 million direct people for direct employment and maybe 4 or 5x indirect. I think the IT industry, as Kiran Majumdar-Shaw also said, does not discriminate. As if you know how to code, if you are a good engineer, you get hired. As simple as that. So I think the fundamental point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of emphasis on skilling and education, and making sure at the top of the funnel that there are emphasis on that, and of course we have reservations in the education system. Two things I think are very, very important. I think Mr. Nitish Kumar has asked for a debate, and he has the right to ask for a debate, and we must encourage that. Because one of the issues that we are seeing is whether it's the unskilled jobs or jobs elsewhere, the private sector has long said CSR is what we use to manage the skilling programs and our equal opportunity in double quotes. But I think there has to be a more contribution there, and in that spirit, having a national debate is good. I mean, there is no change in policy. It's a call for a debate. So I think a call for a healthy debate is always welcome. And lastly, I think Mr. Jha completely alluded to your question on what the Congress party's stance is on the patidars, on the reservations for the patidars.
Okay, I'm actually not going to get drawn into the Gujarat elections right now, both Arvind and Sanjay, but I'm going to actually take a caller online. We've got Sunit Kumar who's calling up on this discussion and he has a view out there. Go ahead, Mr. Kumar.
See, one thing I would like to add here is that our government sector has already been crippled with the job quota. Now, if you want job quota in the private sector also, it will also be crippled. There will be no growth. Already we are on the decline, and we are again taking one step towards killing the creativity, killing the growth of our nation. That's it.
Okay. Sunit Kumar makes a point that the reservations have already crippled the public sector. If you do that in the private sector, it is going to cripple the economy even further and kill growth. I mean, I also have a very strong view on this. Should growth be the domain of just the few, because these marginalized people also form about 72% of India's population? I don't support reservations. So, Sanjay Jha, you want to take that question? Because for decades now, we've seen marginalized, 89 is when reservations were brought in. What purpose has it served? The equity hasn't been bridged in all these years. And and you want to do the same thing to the private sector?
Supriya, let me tell you, I think one needs to bite the bullet. Reservations is a political hot potato. Give you an example, and I'll tell you why Nitish Kumar's statement must not be taken very seriously. He's fully aware that during the Bihar elections, the ideological mentors, the true bosses of the BJP, Mr. Mohan Bhagwat of the RSS, went on record to publicly state that we are against reservations, period. I mean, we also know this, that the Niti Aayog chairman, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, has said no to job reservations in the private sector. So why is Nitish Kumar saying it? I mean, that's exactly the point I think the gentleman, the professor from JNU rightly mentioned. The idea is to just throw a ball up in the air and wait for others to catch it and then run with it. But the bottom line is very straightforward. India today has a significant job crisis. I'll agree with the caller completely. The government jobs, the PSU jobs, PSU bank jobs, by the way, are beginning to shrink. And you have the private sector, which incidentally on account of low investment is not able to create new jobs. So end of day, to talk about reservations, it's like saying that, we're going to have a cake when we don't have the dough, we don't have the cocoa, and we don't have the sugar. So, it's really like shooting in the dark. The bottom line is that we need to, however, address social inequality. And that is something that needs to be done with consensus, with a great deal of maturity. I think India Inc., personally, I'm part of India Inc. as well. And I believe India Inc. will be reasonable, will be fair to kind of enter into a very mature debate as to how can one help, whether it's through CSR or whether it's through any kind of an initiative, to help maybe in the skilling or in a future job creation initiative. But this cannot be a mandated, enforced one, because, end of day, this will be constitutionally untenable, and that will be pretty embarrassing for any government.
Okay, I'm glad there's political consensus on the fact that
So
this
cannot
be mandated and this is constitutionally untenable. I'm glad there's political consensus on this. Debate for sure, we welcome it, and we sure will talk about it. Let's get in one more view from one of our viewers, Kiran Inder Singh, calling in from Patiala with a point of view, and I'm coming to Kiran Mazumdar after that. But Kiran Inder Singh, please go ahead with your point of view.
Yeah, I do agree with Mr. Singh and Mrs. Shaw.
Yes, please go ahead.
See, it's very simple for the BJP and the Congress people to keep on claiming everything, but I am made to understand that that in the Constitution it was Mr. Ambedkar who said the reservations were supposed to be for a limited time, and why is now the same thing being repeated and thrown over these private people? If a person is skilled enough, he is going to get a job. Why don't you simply do something about education? If you cannot do something about education, don't talk about it in politics, because that's what your job is.
Okay.
Unfortunately for this country, this is the biggest problem. And I am very sure, as far as Mr. Elia is concerned,
Right.
I do agree with him in the sense that he can fight for the Dalits and everyone. But the problem here is the Dalits are not the only people living in this country. There are many other people. There are PhDs.
Fair enough.
There are doctorate people who are looking
Right,
for.
right. We
Kiran,
get your point.
you made
We
your
get your
point.
point,
Kiran, you
Mr.
made your
Inder
point.
Singh.
You made your point. Let me get in a word now. Let me get a word from Kiran Mazumdar. I'm coming to Kancha Laya next. But Kiran, you sense this mood of people at least calling in right now on the show, and I'm sure there are people against who are in favor of reservation. But the sense is that people are scared. This is not something that people can afford at a time when job opportunities are as it is scarce. People don't want meritocracy to be compromised on account of of any sort of vote bank politics that there may be. Kiran.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I said, that we need to be realistic about what the job situation is. And I also believe that if we want to really help with those that are excluded from the mainstream, we have to invest in them. That's all I have to say. That if you don't educate them and you don't skill them, then you're not going to make them job worthy. And if you can't make them job worthy, then you cannot abdicate your responsibility and expect private sector to take on people who will not be able to help them with their own competitiveness. So I think it's very clear that you cannot mandate reservation in the private sector, that's for sure. And as far as the national debate is concerned, I really don't understand what you're going to achieve in such a national debate. I think the real opportunity and the real call at this point in time is to focus on why SC/STs feel excluded from the job market. And to me, that is the single focus. Train them, educate them and skill them, and they'll find jobs.
Okay, I do have a caller and I'm going to go to him next. But Kansha Alaya, come in on the point that our callers have made, what Kiran Majumdar Shaw is saying, that India Inc. should play a role. It should be a constructive role. It should be a role to bridge that equity deficit in our society. But it can't be a role where they are forced to have reservations in their sphere. I mean, a role has to be played, and even Kiran Majumdar Shaw is not denying that.
No, look at the way the Indian industry took its social responsibility. Is there a Ambani Foundation to educate any Dalit tribal backwards in this country? Ambani company draws huge oil from Andhra Pradesh, but under the so-called corporate responsibility, it establishes a big school in Bombay, but not in the tribal areas for tribals, not for Dalits in Andhra Pradesh. The Indian industry has been totally anti-social as against the Western industry. For example, after BJP came to power, Ford Foundation's inflow into the scholarships has been stopped. But Indian industry does not give anything for the entire SC/ST OBCs. If skilling is important, can that madam who represents industry close down the private English medium schools where their children get educated and ask for English medium in all government schools on equal basis for everybody? They don't do that. They have a private sector in English education. They have a private company for their jobs, and they have no honest selection. This is all family-bound selection, and it looks like they are against the entire productive community. Their children don't go into army where they have to stand on the China border. They are against protection and production. So this is an anti-national industrial policy.
Okay. Fair enough, Kanchala, you made a point. I want to get in one last caller in before we wrap this debate. Ramesh Chandra calls in from Ambala City. A lot of response coming in from Punjab. Ramesh Chandra, go ahead. Do you have a specific question or a quick point of view?
Actually, I am in the favor of quota policy. अगर ये राजनीतिक मुद्दा नहीं है तो बहुत बढ़िया मुद्दा है, बिकॉज डॉक्टर बी आर अम्बेडकर साहब चाहते थे कि जो दलित वर्ग है, जो वीकर सेक्शन है, जो ओबीसी क्लास है, उसको मिनिमम गारंटी तो होनी चाहिए जॉब्स में, क्योंकि उनके विकास के लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि जो लोग एकदम कटे रहे, एकदम अनपढ़ समाज रहे और एकदम जो है ना अशिक्षित रहे, वो आज शिक्षित होकर आगे आ रहे हैं। और उनको अगर प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स में भी रिजर्वेशन मिल जाता है तो शायद उनका विकास बहुत अच्छी तरीके से हो सकता है। So I'm in the favor.
Okay, you're in favor. Thanks for calling in. We want to sort of, show all all sorts of opinion, diverse views of our viewers also coming through in our debate. But Surinder Jyotka, come in on that, since our caller made the point about of Dr. Ambedkar, fathers of the Constitution sort of kept reservation for just 10 years in mind. Does this also raise a larger point on us having to relook at reservation as a policy in this country, what it has led after 70, almost 75 years of independence in a few years? What have we gained? How, like Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, made this point about what have we done in investing in some of these, sections of the society? What have we really gained? Should people whose one generation have benefited from policies of reservation, should they continue to benefit in the second generation as well? Does that policy also now need to be considered? Should there be a debate on that as well, Surinder Jyotka?
Yes, all these things should be debated all the time. These are state policies. These are not fundamental rights of anybody. These are not ascriptive kind of privileges. These should always be debated. There should be a lot of data collected on this. But at the same time, I want to underline the point that the way we all of us are in the middle class space, and middle class also happens to be largely upper caste, and we want to keep our monopolies over everything. The moment you frame the question in terms of reservation versus merit, reservation versus productivity, you have already decided what the answer is going to be. Then you don't need any data, then you don't need any reflection, then you don't need any discussion. Discussion is already closed by the middle class, by the mindset with which we talk about reservation. Reservation has given a lot to India. If India is a country today, Dalits have stakes in India, it's because of reservation. If Dalits have voice today, they articulate their position, it is because of reservation. If there was no reservation, there would have been no Dalit representation in our politics, in our society, in our economy. Today they have a voice, and that is what keeps India integrated. Conflicts are not always bad. These are people who face discrimination, and they continue to face discrimination. Even in the way we are framing these questions very clearly shows that all of us are prejudiced against their ability to be meritorious or their ability to perform. And it is not simply question of, corporate sector is open, only merit matters. It does not matter. There is plenty of literature coming from all over the world. What matters most are the soft skills. What kind of family background you come from. What do you bring to the table as a cultural kind of person. It's not simply merit, it's not simply education. There are lots of meritorious Dalits, they don't get job. When Dalits apply to private sector, they hide their caste. The moment the employers get to know about their caste, they think that these people are incapable of performing anything. So there is active discrimination, and we need to recognize those things when we talk about caste. Of course, private sector is a different ball game. What Nitish Kumar is saying is not at all serious about it. If they were serious, then they would first fill state jobs and create state capacity where people can prosper. So these are political issues, but they are not just political issues. They are historically very, very significant issues for India. India has gained quite a lot from reservation. One must recognize that. And Ambedkar did not say 10 years. He talked about 10 years for political reservations, and they have continued for various reasons, which perhaps again made sense to people who we have been electing as our representative. It has not come because Dalits have demanded it as their right. These are all passed Indian parliament. And if they passed in Indian parliament, they have a legitimacy. We are a democratic country. We must accept the institutions of democracy if we want to be part.
Yes. Yes. Professor Jyotka, you have a very, very important point there, that I think reservations cannot be just brushed aside. They have served a purpose, but there comes a time in every democracy when decisions need to be relooked at. Second generation should not be getting a reservation because they have a social milieu. I think we're going to take a quick Twitter poll, completely out of time here. We posed the question, should there be reservation for jobs in the private sector? Straight and simple. 8% say yes and 92% say no. But of course, that's representative of people who are online, who are users of Twitter, and who've given their judgment there. May not be reflective of the rest of India, but we at ET now believe merit is important. Like Professor Jyotka was pointing out there, merit is not the domain of any caste. You could be meritorious no matter which background you come from. But on that note, thank you very, very much, Professor Jyotka, Kancha Alaya, Sanjay Jha, Arvind Gupta, and of course Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, for being such a tall voice from Indian industry, for joining us on this very, very special debate.
We'll slip into a short break, but on the other side, the Paradise Papers, a setback for the government and for its crackdown on black money drive. That Sensational debate is coming up in just a few minutes on India Development Debate. We're joined by a stellar panel. We've got Prashant Bhushan, Hitesh Jain, Ritu Sarin of the Indian Express, the journalist behind the news break, also joins in. You got to keep it with ET Now. Thanks for watching us.